Hey everyone, it's Mike, and as with me, as is typically the case, is Corey. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
And this is the first private Patreon video for September, and we wanted to give you guys a secret sneak peek at the boss for level 1 that Corey has designed, and we need to animate. So Corey and I needed to do a meeting, also known as a scrum, anyway, in order to really work out the move set for the boss. So we figured we might as well make this into a behind-the-scenes video for you guys so you can see how that process goes. But we had already conceptually worked out the boss, and then Corey, he did a mock-up of the boss and gave it to me for feedback, and then we discussed it a little and he made changes. So you're going to be able to see the sort of before and after the first version of the boss with the changed version after our initial discussion. And so the concept of this boss is it ties into the overall plot of the game, which is that female character Kim that everyone has seen now. She's a cop, and her father was fairly high up in the police force, in the local police force of this city, and her father ends up dead, and she wants it. She thinks it's suspicious. She thinks her father was on to some high-level cops having been recently bribed, and she wants it looked into, but she's getting stonewalled. And basically Kim, she gets forced to turn in her badge. Very quintessential, like early 90s, late 80s kind of movie cliche, which is exactly what we want. So the overall plot is that these three crime bosses from outside of the US, they all make a deal. They get together and they say, we're going to start taking over American cities, displacing the organized crime in those cities. We're going to take over and end up controlling all of the major American cities. And this is one of the cities that they're trying to do this in. So they're bribing cops and they're setting up their own henchmen and stuff like that. And Kim's father was one of the cops that higher up that would not accept the bribe and was going to expose them, so he was killed. And then when she pressured for a legitimate investigation, then she got, she kept pushing for it, so they suspended her, and then she's going vigilante. In the meantime, street thugs are starting to, just brazenly go out and try to take over the streets and shake down little businesses and stuff like that. And Alex, he either owns, I haven't decided yet, he either owns, or maybe his dad or his uncle, somebody owns an MMA gym that he works in and that Kim sometimes trains in, and that's how they know each other. And so the beginning of level 1, you actually see them coming out of that MMA gym, and there are all the thugs in the streets that they now have to take care of. And when you get to the end of level 1, there's actually a low-level cop that has been bribed that is sort of the first higher up, so to speak, beyond a thug, the first person that the criminals are setting out to try to stop Kim from any more potential vigilante action. So the first level boss is this crooked cop. The idea is going to be when you get to a certain point in the level, scrolling will stop. There will probably be a siren sound increasing in volume from off screen. And then this is just a photo we stole from the internet to get the idea across. But you'll see this car actually pull up and come to a stop. It'll be rumbling a little to simulate the running engine, which will stop. And then the actual crooked cop is going to come out. And before we show that here in Photoshop in layers, here is Corey's work after the initial description where I described the crooked cop vaguely. That this is the great sprite work that Corey came up with, or technically for Amiga's, I guess, Bob work. We could name him Bob, come to think of it.
That is true. That is true. It's not bad.
Yeah. But the only issues I had with him were we did not yet have, among any of the bad guys yet, a blonde, so I figured why not make him blonde for that increased visual variety in the first level. And then the other thing was, since he's a boss, even though Mule is a very big character and he's pretty much Mule's height, for the boss characters, even though it's a bit ridiculous, like he would probably be over 7 feet in reality or something, it's worth it, even though it defies reality. It's worth it to really make the bosses especially big and impressive and more intimidating that way. So there is the final boss character design that Corey will be animating. And then that is the same original one that us pixel artists, when we were working on a new character sprite of a certain size, we put references for scale. So Corey wanted the original version to be able to be on screen to reference at the same time. So we put it on either side. But anyway.
Yeah, and I threw Mule in there because he was our biggest guy. Yeah. So I thought,
exactly.
Like he needs to, he needs to be a little bigger than that guy,
right?
As we discussed.
Yeah.
So
scale reference, very important when you're designing a character, to make sure that they make sense compared to the other characters. If you want to see an incident where either that failed or they just decided it was less important than just being able to put as much detail as they wanted in the character. If you look at the original Street Fighter 2 games, Chun-Li, if she stood up, she would be taller than anyone except maybe Zangief. Right. But because she's very crouched down, you don't notice it so much. But especially for a Chinese woman, she's absolutely gigantic in height.
And that sort of became like the trope for her, was like the really long legs, you know what I mean? And how they drew them and everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It could have started as a mistake, but like I said, they may have just made the judgment call that, well, if we make her actuals to scale versus the men, then her whole body and her head needs to be smaller, and it's harder to put nice details in smaller pixel art, smaller face, smaller everything. So they may have just made the judgment call that it was worth it to have her technically monstrously big, because most people won't notice because she's drawn more feminine and thinner, less muscular arms and stuff like that, and she's crouched down. Maybe they just figured it's worth it and most people won't notice just how giant she is. But anyway.
Well, when you're seeing them moving around and all that,
Yeah, exactly. It's very easy to not notice.
Yeah.
All right, so back to the PSD file. So now you can see there he is, how he'll look in the actual level. And so when this car pulls up, what we can do, like I said, that's going to rumble, and it's actually going to slide into a stop. It'll stop rumbling, and we're going to do a nice little gag because he's a big, hefty cop. Yeah, I mean, he's massive. He'd probably be close to 400 pounds in real life. Like, the car will actually go up once he exits it. Like, we'll have a door. Like, this is the goal. If we can pull it off and fit it all in memory, the car will slide in. There'll be a sound of a door opening, a car door opening and closing. So we will have him come out like this, kind of a South Park style quick animation. and then the car, as he's coming out of it, it'll just kind of glide back up like 3 or 4 pixels. Like the suspension now has a lot less weight on it, so the car will just elevate up on its suspension. And so then, now Corey and I can discuss the exact moves of the character so Corey knows what to animate. So he's going to be a slow walker for his normal mode of just getting around. And then what we want to do, his first mode of behavior is going to be similar to Mule in that he's a slow-moving character, but if you get close to him, he could do like a dash forward at you with a powerful attack. And so, yeah, he's going to have 2 modes. There's going to be a first mode where he's not holding any weapons, I think. I'll give that a little thought. I mean, he could have like a typical cop nightstick.
Yeah, and that was what I thought about, giving him like a gun, because he kind of has one, and I was like, well, if he was really going to solve the situation, he would use that, and like maybe there's some reason he wouldn't have it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we discussed this a long time ago, and I think the potential solution I came up with is to work it into the story that there's another person that might still be a cop, or somebody else that is on the side of the good guys that would be in a situation at this moment where when the cop goes to pull his gun, he shoots the gun out of the cop's hand and the gun goes flying off the screen. Yeah. Something like that. I
was thinking it would just be like glue in the holster so he can't get it. No, I'm kidding. Too comical.
Right. We'd have to have a whole like Police Academy style cinematic segment before the boss rolls up. So I don't think we want to spend that much time on a gag. Yeah, so that is definitely something we should give thought to, because it would make sense for him to not have a holster, but I also, at least for now, my feeling is I want to keep gunplay out of the game.
Right.
But that could be a fun kind of explanation for why the cop is not just shooting them. So yeah, we'll work out that idea maybe a little later. But for now, the important thing is he comes out and he will, I'm thinking maybe give him a nightstick. Like maybe if we do the gun thing, maybe he'll draw the gun, that'll get knocked away, and then he'll pull a nightstick off of, like the opposite hip, he could have a nightstick hanging there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's go with that. In fact, that'll make him more different from Mule as well.
Right.
And then so he'll just walk around slowly. If you get close, he'll try to lunge out at you with the nightstick. The other mode, once you get his health halfway down, there are two things that are going to happen. One thing is... Oh, that's right. That's the other thing. Yeah, this is going to be a sophisticated intro if we could pull it all off. One thing we want to do that we just think will be a funny surprise sight gag for everyone. And everyone, please keep this a secret for any non-patron, so that if we manage to pull it off, that it's a nice surprise. But also if we don't manage to pull it off, people won't be disappointed that it's not in the game.
Right.
But so this is the goal, is that when he comes out, he'll be holding a box of donuts, a very 80s to 90s cliche of the, the fat cop with the donuts. And he would rest the donuts on the hood of the car. Remember, this is just completely wrong perspective, wrong scale, just images I grabbed to get the point across. But anyway, so he'll fight you, but when his health is halfway down, he'll actually run over to the hood of the car and just like the players can do with trash turkey and soda and hamburgers, the cop would actually eat the box of donuts and replenish some of his health. And then, but once you got him down again to about the halfway point, and at the same time while you're fighting the boss, we need to benchmark it, but we're hoping we can have at least one normal small enemy on screen with him at the same time, and every time that small enemy gets beat, we can have it so he can whistle to call in another one, or they'll just automatically come in, or both, like maybe 2 or 3 will come in, you beat them, and then he'll whistle, and then more will come in, or something like that. The important point is he'll whistle or something, and another enemy, maybe a slightly tougher one, will come out to buy him some time. He's going to run to the back of the car where you can't see off screen. You're going to hear a little noise, another door opening. He's going to come back on screen with Riot. Ooh, I forgot. I was in Photoshop. But anyway, the point is he will come out with riot gear. So we'll have a cop riot shield and a taser, which will allow the game to put use to the memory we're using for Kim's taser effect, electrocution effect.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll have a taser as well. And the difference with when he tases you, you'll get electrocuted really quickly, but then you'll drop down into like a stunned state, and then he's going to try to hit you while you're down. That's the idea of that. So he'll have a shield, and he'll try to get close enough to you, and then he'll lunge forward with the taser. And then also, if he hits you with the taser, I'm thinking potentially as many as 2 different attacks he can do. One general one that he can also do is a shield bash, where he'll just dash forward quickly, but maybe a short distance, like a third of the screen, between a quarter and a third of the screen. He'll just dash forward with a shield ram. And then the other one would be, he'd kind of bring the shield behind him on that side, and would just do a low kick to kick you while you're down.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 attacks for that mode for sure. Oh, well, there's 3. There's walking around with the shield, and he can block, right? So there's general walking, there's blocking with the shield, there's tasering. So the taser obviously will be in this arm, like I did that white blob before to represent the taser. And then walk with shield, block, taser, shield ram, and that can use almost all, I think, the same body parts as the blocking.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just like lean him forward a bit and make him move forward. Change his leg and feet position a little from like other walking frames. And then, so that's it for that. And obviously everyone, he's a giant character, and we don't want the load to take forever. There's certainly going to need to be a load between when you're fighting the regular enemies and then when you get to the boss. And we don't want to run out of memory, and we don't want the load to take forever. And we have the cop car, the donuts, and the 2 behaviors of the cop, and we need to still be able to fit one type of thug's art in memory. So it's going to be a challenge. This is what we're hoping to pull off, and it's what we're shooting for. And worst case scenario, we might have to pare down some of these cool extra polish bits and kind of gags. But this is what we're hoping to be able to pull off. So in the regular mode, I think, just walk around with the nightstick. Just a little inside information for everyone that is new to this. Earlier in the Amiga Build stream, we talked about how the characters are made out of body parts that are moved around and swapped out to create all the animation frames. In order to fit this game in the 1 meg limit, we have to be really careful with how many body part images we're using per character, especially for such a large character. So, and something similar was done back in the old days. So when you see a big character like Mike Hagar or Andor, there's 2 reasons that they walk with their arms forward like that, and the arms aren't just like swinging down by their side. One, it's more interesting and it looks more like a combat pose, because if you're about to do combat, you're probably going to have your arms up in some kind of fisticuffs-like way. But if not, if you're a grappler, you might be doing something more like having your arms out so you're going to grab. So it saves memory, and it's more visually compelling, and it gives those characters more... it makes them more interesting. But the point is, with this cop, I'm thinking one thing that we could potentially do when he's ready to fight and he's doing the nightstick, maybe have him whacking holding the nightstick in one hand, obviously, and whacking it into the palm of the other. Kind of like someone might do the cliche of the fist, like clapping your fist into your hand. Exactly right. So like that could potentially only take like maybe 1 frame with the one arm with the hand down ready to accept the hit of the nightstick. And then the other maybe just 2 frames for the nightstick up and then nightstick into the hand. And then just do a little bounce and follow through with the arms just by moving the arm images. And a little impact flash can be added to pull it off. But that's what I'm thinking. So he'll have his nightstick, he'll be doing that threatening, whacking his own hand with it. And then when you get close enough, he'll have a tell and then he'll swing with the nightstick. It could be kind of cool to give him a quick forward jab to the gut with the nightstick. So there would be the one with the longer tell where it's like an overhead swing.
Yeah.
But then the other one could be like a jab at the solar plexus or something that could stun you if he hits you with it.
Right, yeah.
But that's what I'm thinking. And then if you work out a kick for the second mode, the same body parts obviously can be used to do the kick. And we might have the kick in both modes.
Now, right, to get an idea of like how much space we have to work with for him as far as memory goes. Yeah. I mean, I know right now we can fit, a couple of players, 2 separate players, and then like a few thugs.
Right.
So if we only had 1 thug, I mean, he could kind of theoretically almost twice the art of the average. Well, maybe not twice the body parts because he's larger.
Right.
But like, you know what I mean? Like,
if the sprite sheet fit the same amount of room, that's basically correct. But the other thing to keep in mind is right now, the 2 thugs that are in the level, they share the vast majority. Like, they don't share the chest and they don't share the head, but the arms and the legs. The other guy is only like a half a guy or slightly less than a half a guy in memory. But the other thing is that potentially, if Alex can work it out, there's a chance we can remove the art for some of the types of pickups and the trash can and the mailbox to free up more memory. I don't know if that's 100% possible or if that would be really difficult for Alex to add, but that is a potential thing we could do. We might also be able to dump the little portraits of one of the thugs and of Mule. So dumping Mule is critical, otherwise it's not possible, but hopefully also dumping everything else that's not... Oh, we could even maybe, and I mentioned this to Corey earlier, to also save on performance and maybe also memory because this cop guy is so big and there's the cop car. We could have it so that when you get to the end of the level, this building is long enough, is wide enough, that it completely obscures the sky. Because then we could also potentially dump the repeating sprite trick, dump the memory for the sprites, and the same thing with the phone pole. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I know. Like, it definitely takes that extra loading time because, I remember we had this conversation where it's like, with cartridges, you could just swap these things out like kind of in an instant,
incredibly
almost.
Fast. Yeah,
but like, this is gonna be like a disc, so it's
right.
That's a discussion. We'll have to have. With Alex and stuff, is like, what kind of times are we talking about with loading this much art in and out or something?
Right.
I mean, I'm not opposed to a little load time.
It's going to have to happen. It's about optimizing it as much as possible so that we're not making people that actually want the full disc experience to just get pulled out of the game for a long period of time and have this annoyingly loud load time.
Yeah,
long
that would
load
have
time.
to happen anyways, like between levels or something. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, some of the Amiga games were just horrendous. You watch the intro and you're ready to play the game, and you press start or the space bar or whatever to get into the game, or your joystick button, your one button joystick button, and then it'll load for quite a while, several seconds. And then it'll say, okay, now put in disc 2. And you take out disc 1, you put in disc 2, and then it does that for another good 5, 10, 15 seconds. And it'll say, okay, now put back in disc 1. We were very, very patient back then. The attention span and patience of people was, you'd be considered a saint these days to have that kind of patience. And then the game typically wasn't that fun once you were done with all that. But anyway. Yeah, so that's, we want to just make it as fast as possible. But anyway, so that's the overall gameplay. So I don't know if you were keeping a list. Were you keeping a list, Corey? On your end? Well, you could rewatch this video once I upload it on Patreon. But that's the gist of it. So he's never going to run. We're going to have to do the same thing as with Mule because he's so massive. Like, he'll never actually lay down until he's dead. He'll just, like, drop to a knee or something.
One kind of thing we could clarify. I know, like, it seems like he's going to have a lot more actions with the shield and and stuff. And I'm assuming that's because at the beginning, that's when he's got, like, the helper guys coming in.
Yeah.
But then after that, that's when he's kind of alone and he's like... the way it is, or
he still might have one thug helping him. If we can get away with having two, then it might start with 2 thugs at a time, and he has the nightstick. But we don't know for sure until we get him in, performance-wise, if that's feasible. But I really think it's a good idea. Like, I'll have to talk to Alex about that. But it probably is going to be a good idea to save performance, to do that thing where we stop doing the repeating sprite trick. And like I said, that could free up memory. Same thing with the pole. Just anything that's not critical can be removed from the equation, so to speak. It's just less things for the game to render and keep track of. So maybe he'll go from having 2 thugs to the second mode. He just has 1 thug at a time, but he's got the shield and the taser. Oh, and one last note to mention, everyone. An interesting thing about this boss is he's also the boss in, like, this, depending on how you treat it, either the second or the third level. So what's going to be interesting and fairly atypical is you're going to beat him to the point where you think you're going to see him do the typical thing of drop on the ground, like Peter Griffith when he's got the arm bent weird when he's from Family Guy. You're going to expect him to do that and blink and disappear, but what's going to happen is he's going to get up and run off screen. The characters are going to follow him, and he just goes down the subway entrance. So you have to chase him down into the subway. And he's probably going to get, like, a couple more thugs are probably going to run in to buy him time. But anyway, so, yeah, he'll run down. You'll chase him down into the subway section. So the idea is you're trying to catch back up to him. And then he's going to go into a subway, as are the players. So that's going to be the second and third kind of different environments. It's going to be down in the subways and then into an actual moving subway car will be kind of the third environment. So anyway, that's what we have in mind. And like I said, please, everyone, don't tell these plans to anyone, because any of these things, like, we always shoot for the most coolest ideas we can come up with. And then it's a matter of busting our butts to optimize and see how much of it, hopefully all of it, but see how much of it we can get in. And then we have to make that judgment call. If we can't, which one's more important, which has a more payoff for the player, which is more entertaining or more compelling or more fun. So, and then we also have to find that balance with load time as well.
Right. I mean, I don't know if the donuts are going to fit in there, you know?
Yeah, of all the things that that is has a big memory footprint, the donuts is the least of the concern, especially if we could dump the other pickups by then. Like you know, if we can, that would be a 1-to-1 swap. If we don't need the turkey dinner anymore, then the donuts would take that same memory.
That's something to consider. Like, depending on how we do this fight, are we going to want the player to have a chance to get some sort of health during it or not? I mean, we'll have to think about that. You know?
Yeah, and if so, how would that work, right?
Right. I think that'll come down to, like, once we get it working, like, we'll be able to make those judgments.
Right. But, and that's the thing. This is the level 1 boss. I have a feeling the best thing to do, and I think they did both things in the first level of Streets of Rage 2. I think there were health pickups along the way, and I don't remember if it was... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say you could, like, bust that wall back there and a turkey come out.
It does look like Alex is smacking the wall back there.
Right.
So. This guy just happened to get in the way. But yeah, that's the general idea. Is we will need to consider that if the players midway through the fight can get some kind of health pickups, how would that happen? How would it be introduced on the screen?
Yeah, because I mean I've seen that sometimes in games, but it's not. You know, most of the time, it seems like people try to just kind of restrict you with that sort of thing.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking, just make sure the players have health pickups they can pick up just before the boss fight or shortly before, and then just make sure this first boss isn't that tough. Like, even though he's a really big guy and he's got a taser and a shield, he doesn't have a lot of moves, and he can have fairly long tells. He could be fairly easy to dodge because the player characters are very agile. So it's all about finding that balance. We might not need to worry about it at all, so long as we make sure that beginner players have a chance to make sure their health meters are completely full before the fight. That might be perfectly fine. If not, we'll have to be more creative and figure out a way to get health pickups on the screen. And it could be as simple as, like, having the thugs walk onto the screen, like, holding the soda cans or something. You know what I mean? And you hit them and they drop the soda can. I've never seen that in any other game. So that could be a fun way to do it. It's all about familiarity, but...
They're bringing their big gulps to the fight, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I mean, it could be fun. Now it's overlapping a lot with the donut thing. You know, like all the bad guys are coming onto the screen with their junk food. But it could be fun. It could be an interesting way to do it. So I'm definitely not ruling that out as too goofy or something. I think people would appreciate. I think it fits the overall campy vibe of all the classic fighters, but it's never been done. So it fits right into our modus operandi of new nostalgia, of having the feeling just right as far as from a nostalgic sensibility standpoint, but still surprising you with twists to the plots and the gameplay and stuff like that. So anyway,
I think it sounds cool. I mean, I think that based on everything discussed, it seems like it should work, you know.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed though, just looking at this, with the cop car down there or the SUV or you know whatever we end up going with, I like the idea of the SUV. Mm-hmm. The only thing is, like, one thing we sort of mentioned before was like the lights on the top of the car being sort of the obvious cop car indicator. And they're not there in this cropping, and I'm wondering if that's going to be a big deal. It does look like a police car.
Right.
And it's going to have the siren and everything, so it's going to have a lot of indicators.
Yeah, it's going to have the siren sound. It's going to have a cop clearly coming out of it once it's parked. And I think there's going to be enough room here to hint at, like, a really kind of cliched, quintessential cop icon. Right. But we definitely can play with...
And you could even do something like extra lights, like, on the front. Something, you know, like near the headlights that are kind of flashing too, or, you know, whatever. But
definitely. Or some people, but that was more for undercover cops that would sometimes have they'd have the portable siren like inside here, like on the dashboard. Mm-hmm. I guess that's not the siren, that's the light, but you know what I mean.
Right. I think it'll be fine. I think with the paint job and I do kind of like those bars on the front. We could do a take on that, you know.
Like maybe instead of having the backward word police here or frontward, there could just be like a very blatant blue star.
Yeah,
you know, with maybe even the word police. It's enough pixels for sure to have at least most of a blue star and the word police there.
Right.
And actually just enough. You know what I mean? You could have a siren up there just enough. And that's definitely enough to get the point across. Like, and especially with the siren sound coming in with like a Doppler effect before it comes to a halt. I think that'll really pull it off nicely. Yeah, and then if we have to skimp out for memory and load time reasons, then you'll just walk there, and after some load time, the cop car will just already be there, maybe with the donuts on the hood, and the cop will just be there. But hopefully we can do this fun stuff. But there's a lot to do. We'll see. Right. But like I said, it's just all about just coming up with all the best ideas possible, and then seeing what we can actually make happen within the actual technical constraints. But I think that is it for this. I think Corey knows what he has to do, or he will know once he rewatches this video. Worst case scenario.
Well, I started a little list. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. All right. So that is it. That's how these scrums work. We just figure out what we need, and I can save out this PSD so he has a general sense of overall scale and how much of the cop car needs to show up. Obviously, the perspective needs to be completely different to fit that sort of almost pseudo isometric perspective on the pavement, and he has to use the actual available colors from the game level. But aside from that, I think he's got all the information he needs to go, and I can't wait to surprise Alex with this giant list of stuff we want to hopefully make happen. Luckily, a lot of it will just be animations that we can pre-create in the sprite or prototype. So it's not a giant amount of stuff for him to do. Like even the eating the donuts, it would literally just be, he would use his walk animation for a second from here, and then there'd just be a quick grabbing animation and the donut box would disappear. Right. And then there'd be that, whatever the same sound is in the game when characters grab a health regeneration item, the same sound will happen for the cop. But anyway, that is it. And thanks so much, patrons, and quite a few new patrons after the Amiga Bill show. I really appreciate that, and I hope this first video for you guys has been entertaining. And yeah, that's it. I'll stop rambling now. Thanks very much for watching.